Rome. The year is 125 AD. Somewhere between 800,000 and 1 million people are packed inside these walls, the first city in human history to hold 1 million lives, and the last to do it for more than 1,000 years after. The air is a single held note: wood smoke, bread, animal, the sourness of the river, and under all of it, the wet stone smell of running water that never stops moving through the city day and night for free. Every scene in this film is an AI reconstruction, built from the archaeological and written record. The aqueducts, the account books, the broken pottery, the complaints scratched down by people who actually lived here. This is Rome at the height of its power, rebuilt as faithfully as the evidence allows. Let's walk into it. To understand the scale of it, pull back, an empire wrapped around an entire sea. From the reign of northern Britain, where the Emperor Hadrian is at this very moment ordering a wall built across the island, to the deserts of Egypt, to the edge of Persia. Perhaps 60 million people live under Roman rule, and every road, quite literally, runs to one point on the map. Rome sits inland a few miles up the river Tiber, on and between its famous 7 hills. It was never planned. It grew. For 800 years it grew, knot by knot, until it became the most crowded, most engineered, most improbable place on Earth. No other city would match its population until London in the 19th century. We are going to spend the next 20 minutes inside it. Not the ruins, the living thing. You would have arrived on foot or by cart along one of the great stone roads, and you would have known you were close long before you saw the city, because you would have started walking beneath the aqueducts. They come in across the plain on tiers of brick and stone arches, marching toward the city like the spine of some enormous animal, carrying water down from the hills sometimes 50, 60 miles away. 11 of them feed Rome by this date. Together, they deliver, on the best modern estimates, on the order of 1 million cubic meters of water into the city every single day, an amount that would not be matched by any European city until the modern age. Then the walls, then the gates, and then the noise hits you like a wall of its own. Because Rome is loud in a way that is difficult to imagine. Hundreds of thousands of voices, iron cartwheels on stone, hammering animals, the shouts of 100 languages, because this is the most cosmopolitan place in the world. Egyptians, Greeks, Syrians, Gauls, Britons, North Africans, Jews, freed slaves and enslaved people. A genuine human ocean, and by some estimates, 1/3 or more of the people around you are enslaved. At the center of it all is the Forum, and it is not one square, but a chain of them, marble stacked against marble by 3 centuries of emperors, each trying to outbuild the last. This is the beating heart of public Rome. Law is argued here in open-air courts. Fortunes are made and lost. Senators move through the crowd trailed by clients. Ordinary men who attend a powerful patron every morning in exchange for favor or a coin or a meal. It is a face-to-face society running at the scale of a modern metropolis, and it works on relationships, reputation, and noise. Above it rises the newest wonder in the city, the Forum of the Emperor Trajan, finished barely a decade ago. Its markets climb the hillside in tiers of brick. Dozens of shops and offices stacked like a shopping complex, built 2,000 years too early. And at its heart stands a single carved column, 30 meters tall, spiraling from base to top, with a continuous stone comic strip of the Emperor's Wars, 155 scenes, 2,500 human figures, painted in its day in bright color. Look at the temples, and you have to correct your imagination. We picture Rome as clean, white marble. It was not. It was painted reds, ochres, blues, gilding, garish by our taste, a city shouting in color under a hard Mediterranean sun. But almost none of the million people around you live anywhere near this splendor. To meet the real Rome, you have to look up. The city is built vertically. The rich have their private houses, the domus, with its courtyard and its garden and its silence. But a survey of the city, taken a couple of centuries after this, counts around 1,800 such houses, against roughly 46,000 insulae, apartment blocks. The maths is the whole story. For every grand villa, there are 25 tenement buildings, and the overwhelming majority of Romans live stacked inside them. They rise 5, 6, sometimes 7 stories, so tall and so prone to collapse that emperors passed laws capping their height. Augustus limited them to around 20 meters. Trajan cut the limit further. The buildings were run up fast and cheap by speculators, timber framed above the lower floors, and they fell down and they burned with a regularity that horrified the people who lived under them. The ground floor is the good floor, shops opening onto the street, and behind them the roomy apartments of people with money, and then it inverts as you climb. The higher you go, the poorer, the smaller, the more dangerous, until you reach the top, under the roof, where the water does not reach and the fire escape does not exist. So climb. You live on the 4th floor of an insula in the crowded valley between 2 of the hills. The stair is dark and it is narrow, and you have climbed it 1,000 times in the dark. Your rooms are small and you rent them by the month, and if you cannot pay, you are out. There is always someone waiting for the space. There is no kitchen, because open flame in a timber building 4 floors up is how whole streets die, so you cook on a small brazier if you dare. Or you do what most of the city does, and you buy your hot meals from the bar on the corner. There is no running water up here. The aqueducts feed the street fountains and the great houses and the baths, not the top of a tenement. So you carry every drop you drink up 4 flights, and everything else goes into a pot. And the pot goes, if your neighbors are decent, down to the cesspit, and if they are not, it goes out of the window into the street below. At night, you lie in the dark and you listen to the city. Carts are banned from the streets in daylight, so they come after sunset, hundreds of them, iron wheels on stone, all night, delivering the food that 1 million mouths will eat tomorrow. A Roman writer of exactly this period complained that the noise of the night traffic could kill a man, that only the very rich in Rome ever truly slept. You are not the very rich, so you listen, and you smell the smoke, and you hope it is someone else's building, and eventually you sleep. That water you carried up the stairs, follow it back down, because it is the real miracle of this city. The Romans did not invent the aqueduct, but they built them at a scale no one had dared. The water arrives by nothing more than gravity, falling a few centimeters per 100 meters across tens of miles of stone channel, calibrated by surveyors with hand tools to a precision that is genuinely hard to believe. We know the system in detail because the man who ran it, Frontinus, the city's water commissioner, wrote a manual about it. Pipe sizes, flow rates, the fraud he uncovered, workers tapping the mains to sell water on the side. It arrives and it never stops. It runs continuously through hundreds of public fountains, through the vast public baths, through private pipes taxed by the width and the overflow, does the city's other essential work. It flushes. Under the streets runs the Cloaca Maxima, the great drain, first dug when Rome was a village of huts and still carrying the city's waste to the Tiber 500 years later at the scale of a metropolis. And holding all of it up is the invention that made vertical Rome possible at all: concrete, Roman concrete, volcanic ash, lime and rubble that sets hard, that sets underwater, that let them roof enormous spaces without a forest of columns. Its masterpiece is being finished in these very years by Hadrian, the Pantheon, a perfect dome of unreinforced concrete, 43 meters across, lightening its own recipe as it rises so the top will not crush the bottom. It will stand, unbroken, roof intact, for the next 19 centuries. It is standing today. 1 million people cannot feed themselves. Rome has no farmland. It is a city that eats an empire. The center of it is grain. Around 200,000 male citizens receive a free monthly ration. The grain dole, a political fact as much as a nutritional one, because a hungry Roman crowd is the one thing every emperor fears. The grain comes by sea in enormous ships from Egypt and North Africa, the breadbaskets of the empire, and it lands not in Rome, but at the coast, at the great artificial harbor of Portus, where the emperors dug a hexagonal basin out of the shore itself to hold the fleets. From there, it comes up the Tiber by barge to the city wharves. You can still measure the appetite today because the Romans left the evidence in a hill. Down by the river stands a mound over 30 meters high, made of nothing but broken pottery. The smashed remains of some 53 million olive oil jars, carried in, emptied, and thrown away over roughly 2 centuries. An entire artificial hill of packaging. It is one of the only places on Earth where you can stand on the physical scale of ancient consumption. And the streets sell everything the ships bring in: fish sauce and figs, oysters packed in snow brought down from the mountains, Spanish oil, Gaulish wine, spices that have crossed the Indian Ocean. The bars and the food stalls never close. Bread was one half of the famous formula. This is the other. Rome runs on public spectacle, and it runs on it at a scale designed to stagger. The largest structure in the city is not a temple or a palace, it is a place for watching chariots die. The Circus Maximus, a stone canyon in the valley between 2 hills, holds a crowd that scholars estimate somewhere between 150 and 250,000 people. A quarter of the entire city roaring at once for the races. There is nothing in our world quite like a single crowd that size, gathered in one place for sport. And then the newer wonder, half a century old, the great Flavian amphitheater we call the Colosseum. 50,000 spectators, sorted precisely by rank, from the senators at the front to the poor, and the women at the very top. A canvas awning hauled over the whole bowl by a crew of sailors to keep the sun off. A wooden floor over a hidden basement of cages and lifts and machinery from which animals and men are raised into the light to fight and to die in front of the largest audiences the ancient world ever assembled. We reconstruct these places carefully from the stones that survive and the accounts that describe them. But we should be honest about what the cheering was for. The spectacle of Rome was very often killing. The city was magnificent, and it was cruel, and both of those are true at the same time. The sun goes down, and the character of the city changes completely. There is no street lighting. The great public spaces empty and go dark. The wealthy who must move at night move inside a bubble of torches escorted by their own people, because after dark, the streets belong to the carts, to the thieves, and to the fires. Fire is the permanent terror of Rome. In a city of timber-framed towers, packed shoulder to shoulder, lit by open flame and oil lamps, fire is not a risk, it is a certainty. And it is only ever a question of how much of the city goes. This time, 60 years before our visit, a fire burned for over a week and destroyed most of Rome. So the city has a professional force against it. 7 cohorts of vigiles, thousands of men, night watchmen and firefighters both, who patrol the dark streets with buckets and hooks and pumps, watching for the glow. Stand on one of the hills after midnight and look out over it. 1 million people in the dark, a few points of firelight, the endless grind of the cart traffic below, the aqueducts still running, unseen, unstopping, the greatest city on earth, holding its breath until morning. None of this was destined to last. Within a few centuries, the aqueducts would be cut, the population would drain away, the great blocks would empty and fall, and the mound of broken jars would outlast the empire that made it. But in the year 125, standing here, none of that has happened yet. This is the summit, the largest, richest, most engineered city humanity had ever built, at the exact moment before the long descent. Every image in this film was reconstructed from the surviving record, the ruins, the writers, the account books, the rubbish they left behind, and rebuilt with AI, as faithfully as the evidence allows. Where we guessed carefully. Where the sources disagree, we told you. So here is the question, and I would genuinely like your answer in the comments. Which ancient city should we rebuild next? Alexandria at its height, Constantinople before the fall, Tenochtitlan on the water. Tell me where to point the machine. And if you want to keep walking through cities the way they actually were, not the ruins, but the living things, subscribe and you will be there